Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach came out in December, and it's not very good, like at all. It's broken all to hell. Yes, Mark?
No, I'm just gasping for emotional effect. Just carry on.
It's not very good. It's broken to all hell, and like a lot of game design choices that don't really work with each other, and of course a lot of things that were dummied out. But we're not talking about that today, because I don't know shit about game design. Mark does, so maybe he can talk about it. He probably won't. He doesn't give that much of a shit about that. But I am here to talk about the story, and I got a bone to pick with the FNAF community and like their perception on the lore, as it were. Okay, you ready for me to like? What's your thoughts so far, Mark?
I really think you should have gone for like a Skeletor voice when you said "bone to pick with you," but that's about it.
I've got a bone to pick with it. See, here's the thing. Like, I can't really do the voice well.
Yeah, that's okay. You try.
So, my problem with like the lore is that people have criticized Security Breach for many valid reasons when it comes to the story, like the bare bones plot, lack of character development. No real themes or messages to impart outside like little bits of satire, and also just a very confusing end that doesn't really explain anything and doesn't really flesh out anything, and likely never will. And so here's my problem, right? That's the entire franchise, and people act like it's not, and that's what gets to me. Yeah, so like I made a video about this a while ago, and like people did not like it, and their arguments were bad, and they just said like. They just saw the video that I titled, like, FNAF's lore is garbage and here's why, and they just said, well, there has books, so no, you're wrong. I'm not kidding, that was one of the comments.
Wow. No, that was actually an epic Balan Wonderworld reference, where the story is not told in the actual video game, but in a book that you have to buy separately. A genius marketing decision.
Yeah, so that's something that I want to bring up, because a lot of times, like I see people on the Reddit, that's what they call it, the FNAF Reddit, complain about like, oh, all these new kids come from Security Breach. They don't know about the lore. They don't read the books. They don't go through all of Cawthon's several years long Reddit posts. And I'm just like, yeah, that's how it should be. That's how it fucking should be with anything. The idea that you need to know this other stuff to get even just partial information about the main game story is ridiculous. Like, that's insane.
Yeah, it's I mean, also, by the way, I don't know a darn thing about FNAF. I mean, sort of. I get information every now and then from AJ, and some of it even sticks in my brain. But I don't know, like I get what you mean with that. It's I don't know, when you talk about that, I think about Marvel a lot, when they also tell stories through like different parts, like they have the separate Netflix series or whatever, Disney Plus now or whatever, Disney Overlords, yay. But you're still able to figure out the overall story and like what characters are and who they are and what they do and what is generally going on. But it sounds like with FNAF, there was a time traveling ball pit, so yeah, I'm out. I can't do this.
Okay, yeah. So that's a good example, because like the Marvel movies is a good example because of how to do supplemental material. So when we say supplemental, it means like material or comics or books or video games or whatever that's not necessarily needed to understand the main source. So like FNAF is a video game series first and foremost. So all the books, the comics, the possible movie that may or may not exist eventually, merchandise, all that shit doesn't really matter. Like, you should be able to play the games and not know any of that crap, and you should be able to find the games fine. Like, with Watchmen, it was giving more insight on their character development and their past and how they interacting with stuff. With Marvel, it's also doing that, having their own stories and their own arcs in between films, but you can still understand the films, regardless if you watch those or not.
Yeah.
That's how you do supplemental material, because it's meant to supplement it. It's meant to enhance the original, not be the story. Okay, now if it was just that, like they just told a story of FNAF in the books, that'd be one thing. It'd be annoying, but that'd be one thing. But here's the thing, they don't even do that. Like, the lore, quote unquote, in the books have nothing to do with the games. And the different types of book series have nothing to do with each other. Like, they really don't. They're not set in the same universe. They have different characters. They have different ideas on the same characters. Like, I've told you before about, like, Skinny Circus Baby and everything. Yeah. That's known as Eleanor. Like, she's different from the games. And the games, Circus Baby, is different from the trilogy, the Charlie trilogy, Circus Baby. The one that I made the Sexy Widow Circus Baby animatic from.
Oh, God.
Yeah, that one. Yeah. And I would love to dissect everything wrong with how Cawthon portrays Circus Baby and everything, but we don't have time for that. Anyway, what I'm saying is that it's expected that the fans expect other fans to read these things or watch MatPat, which is probably more likely what they're going to do, and then find little bits that can be associated with the main games. Like a good example of this is the character Charlie from the original trilogy. And I brought this up to you, Mark, before. Like, she is the robot daughter of the business partner of the serial killer, whose original child was killed by the serial killer.
Right, I think I sort of remember that. So they put the consciousness of that child in there, or is it like the souls, like in the games?
Okay, so there's this confusing concept called remnant in a lot of the books, and it's kind of sort of in the games, but not really. Where basically, it's the idea that emotions can sort of bind a person's soul to a robot, to metal, sort of spirit metal and stuff.
Right.
Yeah. So the idea is that Charlie's dad loved her so much, and he was so stricken with grief, he wanted to create robots versions of his daughter, and because of that ended up making Charlie alive in some way. It's very
okay.
Yeah.
It makes perfect sense. Also, I love how you started this whole explanation with a deep sigh. It was great. Okay, so here's the deal.
That's all you have to do, and that's another thing that gets me with the fan base is that they know it's ridiculous and ludicrous, and they make jokes about it all the time. But the second you say, "Hey, maybe it shouldn't be written like this," people get mad at you. I don't get it.
Yeah.
I guess I kind of get it, because for me to come in and say that hey, this is all dumb and stupid, yeah, of course they're gonna take that offense to that. But I want to make clear here, if you had fun making these theories and trying to figure out your own stories and use this as a creative outlet, then that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just my problem is that it's not what FNAF gave to you, it's what you gave to FNAF. Alright? And that's true with any fan content. It's not what this was just an outlet, and you could have found any other outlet to do it with.
Ah, that's interesting. That reminds me of Sonic the Hedgehog, where people make fan characters and their own cool stories, and then they want the games to be like that, super edgy and dark sometimes, and then the games are not. And sometimes you have portrayal of characters in fanfics and comics that are super interesting, but nothing like the games, and then people still love these characters even though in the games they've actually never been all that interesting. And I'm glad we're getting some better stuff of that, in the IDW comics. That was really cool to see.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. You're putting into it. You're putting the work into these characters and these worlds and ideas, not the material itself. But because it was a jumping off point, the games were, you're just giving them the credits even though you put in the work. You know about my own fan comic, Fright Guard. I've been working on it for 2 years now.
Yeah.
I really enjoy writing Michael Alton. He's not developed at all in the games. He's not. He gets one paragraph that kind of gives an idea of who he is, and some connections to the previous games, maybe, if you squint at it. But outside of that, he doesn't really have a lot going for him. And that's never going to be explained in the games, because the games don't explain this stuff. They've never explained it. It's just that you've always relied on MatPat and game theory and your own headcanons to supplement the material, even though it's never actually been in the games itself. And another example I want to give into why the lore in the books is so fucking bad when you're trying to apply it to the games, because there's these. Okay, here's another deep side. Let me explain. I think I've told you about Cassidy before, and I did this in an earlier script for this video. Do you remember?
I vaguely remember the name.
Okay, so in the first two games, there's this character called Golden Freddy. I'm sure you remember him.
Yeah.
Yeah. He comes in, he crashes your game. He's a recolor of Freddy, blah, blah, blah. He comes in, for the first two games, and he's sometimes he appears in the later games, but not as antagonistic. Flash forward to Ultimate Custom Night. That's the game, that's the epilogue of the main series story, quote unquote. And basically, a bunch of characters refer to, oh, the one you shouldn't have killed. He's the one you shouldn't have killed whenever you get their death screen. When you, beat 50-20 mode or something like that, the hardest mode possible. you get like a very short cutscene of like Golden Freddy kind of like twitching about and just acting weird, and then that's it. Okay.
Riveting.
Yeah. Okay. So people figured, well, that must be the character, right? That blah blah blah. And if you dig through the files, you get the name Cassie or some shit. I don't fucking remember. Okay. Flash forward to a few years later again. Oh wait, no. For the games, you don't get the name. You just get a picture of like someone. I don't fucking know, man.
It's super vague. I think that's the main draw from this.
And people got on my case last time because like, oh, you got like things about the FNAF lore wrong. I'm like, bitch, look at this shit.
I don't think there's a way to get it right at this point.
That's not the argument you think it is. Like, this is so, it's intentionally confusing and vague and stupid because the creator has no fucking clue what he's doing, okay?
maybe just the plans like change along the way a lot.
That's what I mean, yeah. Like, Cawthon, and I'll put the clips up here. Cawthon has gone on record saying that, like, yes, his plans for the story have changed and everything. And, like, he didn't plan everything out. And why would he? He thought the first game was a last-ditch effort to make game design a career for him. Alright, like, of course he wouldn't plan all this shit out.
So, when you were making Five Nights at Freddy's 1, were you already planning on making a sequel? Or any other ideas what were flinging in your head on what to do?
I definitely left a lot of things open-ended, you know, in case I wanted to expand upon them later. I mean, obviously, like, I did not have the entire story planned out, as I know there's much debate about that on the subreddit. Like, oh, you know, he's some kind of mad genius that had, you know, 7 games planned out from the beginning. No, I didn't. But I definitely knew that the story I was telling in the first game was a small snippet of a larger story. Even if I didn't have all the details of that story fleshed out yet, you know, I knew that the story being told in that game was a smaller part of a whole. You know, and that was a long decision, you know, and it could have gone any direction. And then I chose the indie horror game, and then same thing with the sequel. After I made the first one, I almost didn't make a sequel to it. You know, I was considering 2 or 3 different game ideas. But no, you know, everything turned out for the best, I think. I wouldn't go back and mess with it. For the longest time, I wasn't willing to sign on with any companies because I was keeping the series too tight under wraps. You know, I really wanted to be protective of the story. I didn't want other companies to come in and add characters. I didn't want other companies to come in and add storylines. Yeah. And I'm still holding on to that. You know, my deals with them are very, very specific. Mm-hmm. You know, they don't have free reign to add storylines and characters. But I am more open to getting help now on that box. And he kind of said that he thinks the contents of the box changed over the years, you know, and I bet nobody gave that a whole lot of thought, but I saw that and I was like, he's absolutely right. The contents of that box have changed over the years because, you know, it's for that very reason. It's because, you know, of what I was intending the game to be when it happened, and then after the reaction of it, I was like, I need to craft this into something better for the people who see this as important, and that kind of indirectly does change the contents of the box, you know, because it changes the contents of everything that came before. So I thought that was an interesting observation on his part.
It became successful. It just stood out from any other horror experience as well. So yeah, good job. You know, really good job. Speaking about it exploding, did you think it was going to, you know, get a huge reaction on the internet?
No, of course not. I mean, but like I said, at the time, you know, I was just trying to, you know, make a bunch of little games to kind of, you know, help support my family. And at the time, I think I was making, you know, slot machine games and just, you know, anything would bring in an extra, you know, $40 or $50 a month, you know, and just trying to accumulate all that stuff up. So no, whenever I mean, don't get me wrong, you know, that wasn't just an afterthought of a game. I mean, I put a lot of, you know, time and effort into Five Nights at Freddy's, obviously, but as far as, you know, expecting it to explode, no, of course not.
And that's fine. It's okay that you didn't plan it out. You didn't need to. Like, it's like, if you guys are familiar with webcomics, like, you know this concept a lot, where creators have one idea where they start out, and then they decided, I don't really like this anymore, or they didn't really think it all the way through, and so they scrap it and do it for something else, or they change, like, in the story and retcon various stuff, because they're experimenting. It's like a lot of like amateur artists trying to get their footing. And that's what FNAF does, because it's someone who didn't really have a lot of time to figure out the minutia of the story, because he was just making so many games a year, and he just had to have one idea and just run with it, especially since he was the only one working on it until help wanted. So yeah, it makes sense that it's not good. Like, it doesn't need to be good. Like, the games were solid enough as they are. I mean, I would argue that 3 and Sister Location are pretty bad, but you know, they have their fans, and there's stuff to like about them.
Also, during like actual development of games and books and movies, like a lot of stuff changes along the way. So it's perfectly natural that he didn't have a completely set in stone plan at the very start. But if you have this idea of making this continuous series and with all these characters and connections, then it is good to set some at least like ground rules that you can work with to still give yourself some like flexibility later on. But you have to at least keep things consistent and explain some stuff. Like, wasn't there this weird little case or something like this?
The box from FNAF 4.
What's it called? Sorry?
The box from FNAF 4.
Yeah, there was this box, and it never opened, and we never know what was in there. What was that all about?
I don't know. It never gets explained.
Well, that was around the time where I kind of stopped watching the game theory videos and stopped playing the demos of the games, because I just thought, I don't know where this is going.
Neither does the creator. And like, actually, in like the clip I was talking about earlier with the interview and stuff, is that Cawthon said that like, oh yeah, my idea for that changed later on. Like, yeah, okay, well, fine.
Alright then. Why put it in a game?
Because he was making 2 games a year, that's why. Okay, so, and before anyone in the comments are like, oh, but MadPat said it was, I don't give a shit. Again, this is the point I'm making. You shouldn't need to watch theory videos or go through Cawthon's Reddit posts or read the books to understand just basic shit in a game story, okay? And like, that's where you get down to it. It's like, whenever you find out this shit, it's like, it doesn't even affect the games. Like I was saying with Golden Freddy and Cassidy and stuff. Years later, they found out in like activity book for the games that you find the name Cassidy. Alright, fine. And then years later, you read a story, and then like that story kind of alludes to the idea of 2 souls inhabiting the same like robot. And then people looked back at the activity book and saw like a second name in that same place, Evan. And so like, okay, so it must be the crying child from FNAF 4 and Cassidy, just one of the random 5 victims that are in there. And also with like Security Breach, apparently the character the Princess Quest character that you play as to save Vanessa from becoming Vanny, is also labeled Cassidy. And people aren't entirely sure what that means because they thought that like the princess character was Vanessa herself. But who knows? Who fucking knows? Okay, I told you all of this. Like, do you know how much relevance that has in the games? Fucking 0. You don't need to know any of that. Hell, I didn't know any of that when I got more into the fan base around 2019. And like, so I saw people saying like, oh, this is Cassidy, oh, this is Evan, oh, this is Cassidy, the Cassidy Golden Freddy, blah, blah. Like, who the fuck are you talking about? Because I didn't care about the books, because that's how normal people do it, okay? People are not going to be so obsessively into this franchise as you think they are. Like, they're not. Like, by and large, people don't actually know that much about the series. They just know about like the furry robots being kind of scary, and that's it. Like, if they even know about it. Like, people forget about this, but like, indie games are extremely fucking niche. Like, if you go up to some random person and ask them about indie games, maybe they'll bring up Undertale or something. But they're not gonna bring up, like, FNAF. And they're certainly not gonna bring up all of FNAF's bullshit.
I don't know. I was also just thinking, like, there's a right and a wrong way to do, like, an what's it called? Like, an alternate reality game, sort of? No, that's not what I'm referring to. It's more so, that when you have a game or a product of some kind, and there is supplemental material, and it's like, part of the fun is figuring out the story with like other people online. Like, that is a major component of it. But if there is no clear solution to it and everything just contradicts each other and you never get an answer, then I don't know. That's not really I would say that's not really a right way to do it, you know?
Yeah, it just, I don't know. Like, I get people wanting to figure it out, and like you're psychologically trained to want to figure out answers. That's why we have religion. That's why we have scientists. That's why we have philosophers. We want to figure out why things are the way they are, and that is the fun of mystery stories. That we're trying to figure out the answer, the story, what's going on. But here's the thing: you can't solve a mystery if the creator themselves doesn't even know what the answer is, and gives they can give breadcrumbs of information in 3 different directions. Like, you can't.
Yeah. This reminds me of flipping Gravity Falls. Remember what flipping Alex Hirsch did? Like, he made a fake screenshot at some point because people were onto his actual theories. Like, what was... like, they had to figure out that's... Spoiler alert, that Stan had a twin brother. And so they made a fake screenshot of Old Man McGucket writing the journals, and they posted that online as if it was like a real leak to confuse people. I thought that was like a genius move.
It is a
because
genius move.
because he's still stuck to his plan, but he did make like a little joke to confuse people, and then he eventually, revealed it, and then things started falling into place, and there was still mystery going on. Like, there are still things that have never been fully explained, and some things that have been referred to in journals that they released, and you had to use like a black light to figure out secrets, but you could still understand the story if you watched Gravity Falls from start to finish, and there were still like all these little seeds that they planted and foreshadowing along the way, and I don't know. Kind of feels like that was done a lot better, and there was still like community effort because of people trying to figure it out.
Yeah, and like with Gravity Falls, there was also like a bunch of hidden messages like at the end of the end buffers and stuff that they'll show like little bumps or like different kinds of codes that you're supposed to figure out, and also like the whispering at the end of the title screen, like I'm still here, stuff like that. And that's fun because that's just fun little things for the fans to get a hold of and like try to figure out, try to crack the code and everything, but you don't need to know any of that. You don't need to be aware of any of that to enjoy the main series, because the main series is just a fun, well-written comedy, and with some mystery elements.
Yeah, indeed. Was there anything else you wanted to touch upon?
Oh yeah, I did want to talk about why I think, first of all, I think people are being too harsh on Steel Wool, because they're giving them a lot of they're blaming them a lot for all the problems with Security Breach, and no doubt a good chunk of it has to be them. But when it comes to the story, no, I don't think that's their fault. First of all, they did Help Wanted, and Help Wanted has the best story in the franchise so far, outside of maybe the first one, because the first one is more straightforward. And also Help Wanted is a really good game. So people actually got in their heads that Steel Wool was trying to destroy FNAF and everything because Cawthon retired, and no, that's not true at all. And also
what the fuck?
Yeah, I don't fucking know, man. And also, people got in their heads that, Sony is censoring, certain words and languages, and so that makes it more confusing in the game itself and everything. Because, they couldn't say this character is bleeding. They had to say this character is broken. And, no, there's no evidence you said that's ever happened. You're just speculating. And also, the phrase, you're broken, is something that comes back from FNAF 4. All of this shit, and also, the twist endings with the confusing twist endings, Afton being alive, Molten Freddy being around somehow, or the blah blah blah. Vanessa having some weird doppelganger, may or may not be her spirit in the building. Who fucking knows? Mm-hmm. All this shit, this is nothing but Cawthon's work, because Cawthon doesn't know. Cawthon's a very much a perfectionist. And so he just changes his ideas constantly. I do this a lot too, as an artist who suffers from depression and has a lot of perfectionist tendencies, much like Cawthon does. And you change the idea of what you want to do over and over and over because you're not entirely sure. This is actually the problem that's going on with the movie, and why the movie is just so hard to get off the ground and hard to finish. The scriptwriter's saying, I can't say anything that's against his idea. It just gets shot down immediately. And Cawthon himself said, if we don't make the perfect movie, we're not making any movie at all. That's never going to happen. You're never going to make a perfect...
Yeah, then you're not making a movie. If you want perfect, then just stop pouring money into it, because that's not going to happen. What the hell, man? You're
never going to get perfect anything in art, because art is subjective.
Yeah.
I can sit here and criticize the lore and the gameplay and all that stuff all I want. Doesn't mean anything if someone still says, oh, this is my favorite game of the year. Good for them.
Yeah.
But I say all this because these are problems that have going on in the FNAF franchise since the very beginning. Like, maybe 2, perhaps even 1. But it's not right to act like this is a new thing just because you're upset that Cawthon retired, quote unquote. And more on, like, retired, he still works on pretty much everything with FNAF too. So I think he more just retired from Reddit, which, honestly, same. I can respect that. I don't want to be on Reddit either. I want to wish Reddit on my worst enemy. Scott Cawthon is not this god, okay? He is just a guy that makes some games you like, and this time he had a hand in a game that you didn't like. That's all it came down to. Alright? There's something you need to notice. The name William never shows up in the games. The first name of the main villain doesn't show up. We get Mr. Afton. William Afton never shows up. It's just Afton, Springtrap, Burntrap. Glitchtrap is not actually a name in the game either. That's just a gay name by the fans. And then Burntrap, also a name by the fans, never actually seen in the games. So, like, that's how badly implemented it is. Like, even just basic minor stuff like that doesn't get explained. Yeah.
I remember how they introduced, like, flipping Vanny and Vanessa in Security Breach. Like, I saw that, where they just find her lair or whatever, and it's just written on the wall, like, oh, wait a minute, Vanny, Vanessa, that's like Bunny plus Vanessa, that's Vanny. Oh, it all makes sense now. Like, really?
Yeah, I don't really know how to conclude this, I guess. I don't know. I'm mad, and I'm full of beans. And that's why my boyfriend had to be here to, like, I told him, like, okay, I need you to be here, that way I don't go completely feral. And just, because I know this is not that big a deal, and I have problems. I don't know.
It's alright, you just call it like a long FNAF rant or whatever. It's just, it's always stuff that you're passionate about that you get the most intense, like, reactions to, if it's not, what it could be.
Yeah.
Sonic the Hedgehog. I've been a Sonic the Hedgehog fan for a long time. I have things to say about the blue boy.
Yeah. I don't know. Guys, like, I guess the way to end this is just expect better and stop falling for this lore trap that, not just for that, but a lot of things do, where they just say, like, oh, keep watching, maybe you find out, keep watching, maybe you find out, keep watching, maybe you find out, or read the books, so they understand this, or look at the game, look into the games files and all that stuff to understand the bare minimum. Because I guarantee you, majority of people don't give a shit. 90% of audiences, I assume, are just there, play the game, maybe watch a beauty, maybe watch Markiplier's playthrough or 2, or watch Game Theory's, one of Game Theory's videos, and just be like, alright, I'm out. Like, that's what they're gonna do. Because they don't give a shit. Like, have higher standards for your story to even just put the fucking story in the games themselves instead of doing this fucking wild goose chase that leads nowhere.
Anyway, can't wait for the next game. Definitely gonna dig through the files. Gonna open it in Notepad probably. It's like my hacking skills. Gonna buy all the books. Gonna buy the activity book. Gonna buy the coloring book because there's like a secret in there that refers to the name of William Afton's right toe. Yep.
It's funny you bring it up because, like, people were actually disappointed with the coloring book that it didn't have lore secrets. I'm not
kidding.
Are you
fucking kidding me? Was there a coloring book?
There was a coloring book. It didn't have lore secrets, and then people got annoyed at that.
Of course it didn't have lore secrets. I would hope that it doesn't, because that would be weird. Why would you put that in a coloring book? Like, it's for a different audience. Like, God, why? You gotta make people who like the lore buy all this random crap just to get tiny lore details.
Yes, that's what we've been saying for a half hour now.
I know, it's a genius marketing strategy. I need to do that. God. Thank you for inspiring
just prey
me.
On people's just prey on people's psychological need to, like, continue. And for the record, I don't think this is what Cawthon or Steelwool or whoever is doing. I think Cawthon generally didn't have any idea how to actually implement the games, or was too, like, self-critical on, like, the game's lore itself, so just, like, made a bunch of similar ideas in the books and just hoped to connect it somehow. It reeks to me more as someone who's not very experienced in this, trying and failing to tell a good story.
Maybe. I don't know. It's just lots of stuff changed along the way and it just kind of turned into a mess somehow.
Yeah.
Well,
and that's not even getting into, like, Pizzeria Simulator, which was purposely not advertised because, like, that was just supposed to be a thing for the fans, like, closure for them. And then that game referenced in fucking Security Breach, which is advertised. Like, I don't understand. Whatever. What the fuck ever. I don't. We're ending the video.
It's very messy. Cool beans. Hey, thanks for listening, watching. Who knows?
I think I'll title this like Five Nights at Freddy's discussion lore video. I don't fuck. Goodbye, everyone.
Hey, see ya.